The COVID pandemic wreaked havoc on all sorts of industries, the theater industry, the restaurant industry, and indeed the amusement park industry. And Cedar Point was not exempt from that at all.
No.
They had all sorts of issues that still extend into today. So that's what this video is all about. Everything that has changed about Cedar Point because of COVID. But before we get into this video, we'd like to thank you for coming and joining us.
Absolutely.
We do all sorts of roller coaster and amusement park content. So if you like that kind of stuff, go down and subscribe to this channel.
Right down there, yes.
Give this video a thumbs up. And if by the end of this video you liked it so much that you want even more content, exclusive content, you can go down, link in the description. There's a link to a channel membership. And you can be like one of these people right here. They join our channel membership page so they get exclusive videos, exclusive pictures, exclusive shout outs like you just saw right there.
And it supports the channel so much.
So we can't thank you guys enough
Absolutely.
for all our members enough and all our subscribers. So thank you, and come and join this community if you have not already. But now that that is out of the way, let's get into this video. If we're going to talk about COVID and Cedar Point, we can't start anywhere except for 2019, the year before it all happened. 2019 was off to a rocking start for Cedar Point.
Yes.
3.7 million people attending the park that year, which was a record.
Yeah, that's a record. So a ton of people.
Tony Clark was making cryptic statements about future roller coasters that might be better than Steel Vengeance.
Yeah, and everyone's like, oh my God, what could that be?
They introduced the Gold Pass for the first time.
This is the Gold Pass.
Later in the fall of 2020.
Wasn't good for the people that went to Cedar Point, but it was really good for Cedar Point.
And they started off their multi-year family plan with the opening of Forbidden Frontier, which was an island where they had all sorts of actors and stuff, but this was all supposed to be part of all sorts of things to get families back to Cedar Point, like Cedar Point wanted to do. So it was all off to a great start, and it was going to continue on into 2020, which was going to be their 150th year anniversary.
Yeah, they had big
best
plans.
year yet.
Yeah, they had big plans. There was a live stream that Tony Clark did talking about all the new things for their 150th anniversary. Like you can get orange juice that is shaped like an orange.
That's
How
amazing.
cool is that?
And they were talking about a revamped town hall museum. They were talking about a brand new ride called Snake River Expedition. They were talking about shows and parades, an extended early entry, all sorts of stuff.
So much stuff.
But then, screeching halt, COVID hit, and it was all put on the back burner. 2020 went from one of the best years for Cedar Point down to probably the worst year. Honestly, they were probably looking to hit maybe even 4 million people.
Yeah,
which is unheard of for a park that's only open like 170 some days a year.
Yeah, but they had very high hopes for that year. But spoiler alert, they did not come anywhere close to 4 million guests that year.
Ended up being about 25% of that. They hit just about 1 million guests that year, which was probably their lowest in
a while.
Yeah, quite a few years, obviously, because of all sorts of factors. They had to reduce capacity.
Yeah.
But in 2020, they didn't even open the season until early July, to mid part of July. I can't remember the exact date, but
and they opened very late.
Yeah, they normally open like the first or second week of May, so they were about 2 months later than they normally open. So 2020, horrible start. They had to get rid of things like early entry. They couldn't open Snake River Expedition. They had to delay the town hall. Basically, everything that they thought they were going to do for the 150th year anniversary was just squashed and either killed altogether and or delayed.
Yeah.
And we will get into more of that in a little bit. So when they did open for 2020, it had a completely different look. You had to have a reservation to get into the park. And then once you got into the park, they had like all sorts of crazy things like these.
Yes, this is an access pass. Wow, worth so much money now. So basically, just like how coasters are, where you could just go in line and ride them, it wasn't like that in 2020. They were trying to keep lines to a minimum and not have people so close together. So they introduced these, and basically you needed one of these to ride, and it gave you a little time.
This was for Maverick from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m.
So you can only ride from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m.
You can only get in line at that time.
Yeah. So they didn't work really at all because there were still lines and all that. So, but they had to think of it on the spot. So whatever.
But they had access passes. They had like no early entry, like we said. All sorts of things had to change because of 2020. But you can say, hey, you know what? That was in the heart of the pandemic. Now, a few years later, you can't really bring any of that stuff up. Well, we can because it carried over year after year, and that's what we're going to fully get into.
Yes.
2021, now, they didn't have access passes. They announced that they were going to get rid of access passes, which were to the delight of many people. But the early part of 2021, they still had the reservation system. They didn't get rid of that until I think like maybe like later June, middle June or into July or something like that. It was sometime like early-ish into the season. They got rid of the reservation system so you could just come whenever you want. Beforehand, it was a huge pain.
You had to go on the website. You have a video. Yeah, we have a video on this channel about how to make a reservation. You had to go on their website and do a bunch of stuff.
A lot of people were confused how to make reservations.
It was a confusing thing, yeah. So, you had to go on their website and do a bunch of stuff and select the date and all that.
So that was 2021 that they still had that, but they were able to open Snake River Expedition, and that was the second phase of their multi-year family plan. But something like Town Hall still didn't open. And then they ended up announcing that Town Hall would indeed not open at all in any way, shape, or form like they planned.
Yeah.
So you can count Town Hall as one of the permanent victims of COVID.
Yeah, I was going to get this huge revamp, and they were so excited for it. And nope.
Another thing that got pushed back and possibly scrapped altogether, we still don't know to this point, was that roller coaster that Tony Clark brought up. Now, right now, if asked about it, he completely denies it and says that he didn't say anything like that.
Well, we have proof, and that proof is our memory, because we can't really find any proof that he said it, but he did, and lots of people
heard it. Yeah, lots of people remember, because I brought it up to you one time. I'm like, do you remember when he said that? And you were like,
when he said that the next coaster was going to be better than Steel Vengeance, and it was like, yeah, he said that at some point, and he denies it, but we know Tony.
Yeah, so that idea is floating around somewhere. Cedar Point has some great roller coaster in the works that might be coming up sometime in the near future.
Hopefully that's not scrapped. Hopefully it just got pushed back, and the next major coaster after Top Thrill 2 will be that. Who knows?
So, and then you brought up Top Thrill 2. Obviously, Top Thrill 2 played a part in kind of delaying some of these things.
Yeah, because they had to figure that out.
But we are strictly talking about COVID right here. And to like directly talk about what COVID has delayed, it definitely delayed the boardwalk, because their initial plan was going to be 19 Forbidden Frontier, 2020 was going to be Snake River Expedition. And then I fully believe in 21, and at the end of 2020, they were going to announce the closing of Wicked Twister, because back in 2019, we were talking about the closing of Wicked Twister with our friends at Coaster Legend, and he did a video and we talked about it on there.
Yeah.
Wicked Twister might be closing September 8th, and you know more about this than I do.
Yes, I got word. I get inside information quite often. I got word. Someone already called me, told me, I can't tell you who. I can't tell you that was Tony Clark. He called me personally. He said, Jesse, Horror Coasters, this is for you. 2020, no more Wicked Twister. This is the last year of Wicked Twister.
So in that video, we kind of thought that it might be at the end of 2019 that they announced it, but they obviously didn't announce the closing of Wicked Twister at the end of 2019. But they surely were going to at the end of 2020. And so that would have meant that the boardwalk was actually meant for 2022. And that would have left a nice little gap. You would have had something from 2019, 2020, 2022. And then there was that gap, and that was probably going to be that big major roller coaster that Cedar Point was probably going to do, because that would have been 3 years after Steel Vengeance, and Cedar Point doesn't like going more than a few years between major additions.
Yeah.
So we're talking about 2021 still right now. But one thing that they brought back in 2021 after its removal in 2020 was early entry. Now, we have always taken advantage of early entry. What we used to do in like 2017, 2018,
The good old, the
2019,
golden age of Cedar Point.
yeah, we used to park back at the water park and go through the Magnum entrance for early entry and go
Straight to Maverick.
straight back to Maverick, and then
Or
when
in-
Steel Vengeance opened up.
Yeah, we did Steel Vengeance.
So we used to go back to that. But still to this day, Magnum Gate is not open for early entry. So that is another fatality that COVID had.
Which just sucks, because going back there, like we said, it was just so nice. Huge crowds were at the main gate, but there were only a few people there, and you got to ride everything way before everyone else there, like for early entry, like the other early entry people. So it was just really nice. And unfortunately, that is, you cannot go through there for early entry only during the park's normal hours.
But you might say right now, what's the point of going through Magnum entrance for early entry? Because this past year, they only started off the season with Wild Mouse and Gatekeeper as early entry rides. Later in the season, they ended up adding Millennium Force after a lot of backlash, I guess, and a couple videos that we did complaining about it. I'm sure that had something to do with it. You might say, okay, well, you don't even need to go through the Magnum entrance, which is true right now. But talking about another casualty of COVID is the fact that early entry was cut down from so many roller coasters. You used to have at least five, well, not at least, you used to have 5 roller coasters. Like you would have one year, it was Val Raven, Millennium Force, Steel Vengeance, Maverick, and I think maybe
Val
Raven or
maybe,
something.
yeah, it was something like that, and it was really
Or Gatekeeper,
yeah.
or Gatekeeper, I think.
But it was a great early entry lineup.
Yeah, and then this past year, only 2 coasters, and then they ended up adding a third one. So you can argue, like, okay, what does that have to do with COVID? Well, it has a lot to do with COVID because they are still feeling the effects from the financial loss of 2020. So surely the cutbacks on early entry rides has to do with things like just cost saving, because you figure each ride, they have to be open for like an hour or more for the pre-opening, and then they have to get it, then they have to be open for the full hour for early entry. So you're talking at least 2.5 hours of work for all those employees that it takes to operate like a couple different roller coasters, 2 or 3 different roller coasters. So over the course of 177 days or whatever they're open for throughout the year, that all adds up. So that was indeed a cost-saving measure because they took such a big hit in 2020. So I don't know if 2024 is going to be any different. They haven't announced anything about early entry, but
hopefully.
be sure as soon as any announcement is made for early entry,
We will be first.
we will be first on top of it.
first.
So,
Number 1.
so all the more reason to subscribe. But we don't know if that's going to be a permanent casualty from COVID. Probably not.
Well,
That's
the
probably
port-
something that they will be able to come back from.
Right, yeah. They're yeah.
But we're not sure exactly when. Hopefully this year. If not, hopefully 2025 or so. So we're really looking forward to when that is revitalized and comes back to life, and early entry is everything that it used to be. But as far as casualties go, because of financial hardships, we talked about their big multi-year family plan, Forbidden Frontier, Snake River Expedition, Boardwalk. Well, the Boardwalk is still standing and alive and kicking, but this past year they got rid of Forbidden Frontier. It was, I don't want to say a flop, because we always enjoyed it, but it took a lot of actors and a lot of manpower to run that thing.
Yeah, it took, like you said, there were a lot of people back there, and the overall thing, like Forbidden Frontier was really, really good, and they did a good job at it, but not a ton of people would go back there because it's pretty hidden, which I think is cool, but just people didn't really know it was there. So it was a bit of a flop in a way for the park, hence why it's no more.
And to be spending that kind of money on something that just wasn't getting any sort of foot traffic
It's just not
just
doable.
didn't make sense for them, especially after the tough year because of the pandemic. So another casualty was Forbidden Frontier. And then as soon as Forbidden Frontier went, Snake River Expedition was all about like combining with Forbidden Frontier. The themes were the same. Like the actors a lot of times were the same. You would see some of the actors back in Forbidden Frontier, and then they would come and interact with the Snake River Expedition boat.
Yeah, they talk about characters that were on Forbidden Frontier, and they just went together very well. But when they got rid of Forbidden Frontier,
This
they had to
past
change
year,
it up.
yep.
And basically, Snake River Expedition was themed to Forbidden Frontier clothing because it was like everyone, all the people that lived on Forbidden Frontier left. And
Now their properties are still there, so
Yeah,
now they
and
need
you
to
get-
sell their
yeah.
properties. And you, as the passenger on Snake River
you're
Expedition,
looking for things to buy. So
yeah, you could. So it was themed to real estate from Forbidden Frontier. All the people moving out. So that was a failure waiting to happen, and a lot of people did not like it.
It was whatever for 1 year, but it's in no way a permanent thing.
And now, just like a few weeks ago, or just a couple weeks ago, Cedar Point did officially announce that Snake River Expedition has bit the dust and is no more. So you can chalk that up as yet another casualty to the COVID pandemic, because rest assured, if it wasn't for 2020 being the way it was, Forbidden Frontier and Snake River Expedition would still probably be going strong, because Cedar Point was on such a roll and it was just kiboshed with the pandemic. Now, all these things definitely did change for the worse because of COVID at Cedar Point, but there's good news, people. Just because it is dead right now does not mean that everything is going to stay this way.
No, absolutely
Cedar
not.
Point will rebuild, and after a few years, they will get attendance back up to where it was, and they will be right back to putting in all the things that they wanted to put in the past.
Yeah, attendance is rising, and yeah, they'll get back onto their plan because now they're behind and kind of trying to figure everything out, especially with Top Thrill 2. But now, hopefully, in the next few years or so, they can get back to their plan and really get back to the Cedar Point that we know and love, and get a 500-foot RMC T-Rex.
I mean, because that is definitely going to happen. I mean, Tony Clark pretty much already said that it's going to happen.
Unfortunately, that probably or will not happen, but a coaster just as good, if not better than that, hopefully, Mac Extreme Spinner.
Oh, I would like that. But that is it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe like we said. We enjoyed you guys coming along for this journey through all the miserable things about the last few years at Cedar Point. So I think that's about it. You got anything else to say to the people?
Like, subscribe. That's about it.
Okay, that's it. So we will see you guys next time right here on Beach Cliff Studios. See ya.